4 figures stood before the imposing facade of Hill House, silhouetted against the dying light. The air was thick with anticipation and a sense of foreboding, as if the house itself was aware of their presence and was waiting for them to make the first move. Olivia, the empathetic writer, clutched the hand of her husband, Hugh, a stoic architect with a troubled past. She could feel his tension through their clasped hands, a silent communication of shared fears and unspoken words. Hugh's eyes scanned the house, his mind lightly racing with memories of past traumas and the architectural anomalies that defied logic. Theo, the sensitive artist, shivered despite the summer heat, her eyes drawn to the house's unsettling angles. Each corner seemed to twist and turn in ways that defied the natural order, a visual representation of the chaos that lay within. She felt a chill run down her spine, as if the house was reaching out to her, pulling her into its dark embrace. Luke, the recovering addict, fought back a wave of nausea, a sense of dread washing over him. He had faced many demons in his life, but none as palpable as the one that seemed to emanate from Hill House. The very ground beneath his feet felt unstable, as if the house was alive and breathing, waiting to consume him. They had come seeking answers, drawn to the house by a shared history and a promise of understanding the darkness that clung to them. Each of them carried their own burdens, their own scars, and Hill House seemed to call to them, offering a twisted form of solace and revelation. Hill House had stood for over a century, a monument to forgotten dreams and whispered tragedies. Its walls had witnessed countless stories of sorrow and despair, each one adding to the oppressive atmosphere that now surrounded it. The house was a living entity, feeding off the pain and suffering of those who dared to enter. Its shadow stretched long and cold, swallowing the last rays of the setting sun. The darkness seemed to grow thicker, more tangible, as if the house was drawing in the light and replacing it with its own malevolent energy. The group felt the weight of the shadows pressing down on them, a physical manifestation of the house's sinister intent. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay and the promise of rain, a symphony of unease that played on their nerves. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the leaves seemed amplified, a constant reminder of the house's presence. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each breath they took feeling like a struggle against the oppressive weight of the house's history. As they crossed the threshold, the heavy oak door closing with a resounding thud behind them, they felt a sense of finality. There was no turning back now. They were committed to uncovering the secrets that Hill House held. The interior was even more foreboding, with shadows dancing on the walls and the air thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. They stepped not into a house, but into a presence, a malevolent entity that seemed to coil around them, whispering forgotten secrets and long-buried truths. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing colder with each passing moment. They could feel the house watching them, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true nature. Each step they took echoed through the halls, a reminder that they were not alone, and that Hill House had its own plans for them. The house was a labyrinth of dark hallways and shadowed corners, each room echoing with a silence that felt thick and watchful. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the house itself was alive, breathing in the fears and anxieties of its inhabitants. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind through the cracks, seemed to carry a message, a warning of the unseen forces at play. Olivia ran her fingers along the intricately carved banister, feeling the bite of cold stone beneath her fingertips. The craftsmanship was exquisite, yet there was something unsettling about it, as if the stone held memories of the past, memories that were eager to be remembered. She could almost hear faint whispers, voices from another time, echoing through the cold stone. Hugh, ever the pragmatist, surveyed the structure with a critical eye, noting the unsettling angles and the way the shadows seemed to deepen, even as the sun climbed higher in the sky. He couldn't shake the feeling that the house was designed to confuse, to disorient. The walls seemed to close in on him, the corridors twisting and turning in ways that defied logic. It was as if the house was a living puzzle, one that didn't want to be solved. Theo, her senses heightened, felt a prickling sensation on the back of her neck, as if unseen eyes were following her every move. She paused, listening intently, but the only sound was the beating of her own heart. The feeling of being watched was almost palpable, a constant presence that made her skin crawl. She couldn't shake the sensation that the house was aware of her, that it was studying her, waiting for the right moment to reveal its secrets. She traced the outline of a grotesque face etched into the wallpaper, its expression a rictus of pain and fury. The face seemed to shift and change under her touch, as if it was alive, reacting to her presence. It was a haunting reminder of the countless souls that had passed through the house, each leaving a part of themselves behind. The wallpaper was a tapestry of torment, a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded within these walls. Luke, his breath catching in his throat, stumbled back from a mirror, convinced he saw a flicker of movement in the reflection, a fleeting glimpse of something inhuman staring back at him. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had seen. Was it a trick of the light, or was there truly something lurking within the glass? The mirror seemed to hold a world of its own, a dark and twisted reality that threatened to pull him in. He couldn't shake the feeling that the house was playing with him, testing his resolve, pushing him to the brink of madness. As days turned into nights, the house began to reveal its secrets. Slowly, insidiously, like poison seeping into their bloodstreams. The walls seemed to whisper, the floors creaked with stories untold, and the air grew thick with an unseen presence that weighed heavily on their souls. Olivia found herself plagued by vivid nightmares, her dreams haunted by images of a woman in white, her face obscured by darkness, her voice a chilling whisper that echoed long after she woke. Each night, the dreams grew more intense, the woman's presence more palpable, as if she was trying to communicate something vital, something that Olivia couldn't quite grasp. Hugh, his skepticism waning, started to hear the faint strains of music drifting from the abandoned ballroom. A waltz played on a piano long since silenced. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, yet filled with a melancholic sorrow that tugged at his heart. He found himself drawn to the ballroom, standing at its entrance, listening to the ghostly music that seemed to call out to him. Theo, increasingly withdrawn, found herself sketching the same haunting visage over and over again, the face of a young girl with eyes filled with an ancient sorrow. The sketches seemed to come to life under her hand, each stroke revealing more of the girl's tragic story. Theo felt a deep connection to the girl, as if their fates were somehow intertwined. Luke, his sobriety tested at every turn, swore he saw shadows moving at the edge of his vision, felt the brush of cold fingers against his skin, and heard his name whispered in the dead of night, a voice both seductive and threatening. The house seemed to be alive, its dark energy seeping into his very being, challenging his resolve and sanity. Each encounter left him more shaken, more convinced that the house held a sinister power that sought to consume them all. The boundaries between reality and nightmare began to blur, the house playing tricks on their minds, exploiting their deepest fears and insecurities. Olivia's once comforting empathy morphed into a suffocating paranoia, convinced that the house was trying to separate her from her family. Hugh, desperate to maintain control, threw himself into his work, measuring and sketching, trying to impose order on a place that defied logic and reason. Theo, her sensitivity amplified by the house's malevolent energy, found herself overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions, both her own and those of the unseen presences that surrounded them. Luke, his addiction a constant battle, started to see the house as a living entity, its darkness beckoning him, promising oblivion from the pain of his past. The apparitions grew bolder, their appearances no longer fleeting glimpses, but prolonged encounters that left them shaken and terrified. Olivia found herself face to face with the woman in white, her touch like ice, her voice a mournful whisper that spoke of unimaginable loss and despair. Hugh, his skepticism shattered, watched in horror as the shadows in the ballroom coalesced into the forms of dancing figures, their movements jerky and unnatural, their eyes hollow pits of darkness. Theo, her hand guided by an unseen force, drew a portrait of the ghostly girl, the image so lifelike it seemed to stare back at them from the canvas. Luke, his sanity hanging by a thread, found himself drawn to the red door, the heart of the house's darkness, a voice whispering promises of release and oblivion,